Hello, we're interrupting normal Life in Charms programming for one episode only to turn the spotlight back onto Annoushka Ducas, MBE, founder of her eponymous brand. I'm Susie Lau, a fashion journalist based in London, and I'm here to hijack this podcast to ask Annoushka, the Queen of Charms herself, about her life in 7 charms. So Annoushka, I'm very, very happy to be here to ask you about your life in 7 charms. So first of all, how does it feel to be on the other side of the interviewer setup?
Do you know, it's really relaxing. I'm like, you're the one with the questions here. I'm kind of like, I feel really much more relaxed this side of the mic.
Well, I just love the way that you frame people's lives through charms and telling people's anecdotes. So I just wondered why charms to begin with? Like, that's an obvious question.
Well, no, it's not obvious actually. But I mean, charms have been very much they seem to be part of my life since I was really quite small. My mother used to travel a lot, and she used to bring me charms from different parts of the world. So I think perhaps the obsession started with that. But why I chose to do a podcast around this is because I'm a real fan of desert island discs. Absolutely love it. And one night, I think when I couldn't sleep and I was listening to an episode, I suddenly thought, God, I could absolutely do this. Instead of being around discs, I could do it around charms. And charms are so evocative of memories of important parts of one's life that you want to, remember and solidify, if you like. So that's kind of why I've chosen charms.
Well, I hope I can do this podcast justice and
you'll be much better than me, Susie.
ask them all the right questions about your wonderful 7 charms. So let's begin with your first one. Tell me about your first charm.
So my first charm is a fish. And why a fish? Bit random, but actually it's because my whole career in jewellery started because of fish. My mother had a fish business, and she used to supply kind of 60 of the best restaurants in London, from the Gavroche to Claridge's to the Connaught to Annabelle's, with fish straight from the boats. And when I was living in Hong Kong, age kind of 20, she rang me and she said, look, I've got 60 chefs. They're all men. I need to give them a present. Have you got any ideas? So I was like, not really. I'm selling property. I was working for Hamptons at the time, selling property to Chinese investors in London, pre-97. And then I rang her back because living in Hong Kong, I had this real privilege of being able to travel to different countries for the weekend, etc., etc. So I spent a few days in the Philippines, and I found this workshop making predominantly in silver, but they were really making beautiful things. And so I rang her and said, look, if I find a pictures of fish in a book, we could make those into cufflinks. So it really all began with fish. And in fact, so what we did is we made the first thing I ever designed was these little fish cufflinks on one side, kind of little salmon on the other, and on the other side they were fish bones. And that's kind of why you're looking at that.
For the purposes of those of you listening to the podcast, I'm actually holding the fish charm here, and it's so wonderfully tactile, and the little bones like move.
It's all articulated in it. So for me, that it's so important that charms, they're not static. That if they should move, they do move. So that's totally articulated on the spine, and so that every bone, if you like, has kind of movement to it, and it just makes it really playful.
It's so pretty and so lovely to hold and play around with. But as I understand, you're completely self-taught. Like you don't come from a jewellery design background, and you've had quite like a sort of eclectic career, doing think I read you had a sandwich business. Yes. You were in property. So yeah, I just wondered like how you had the kind of, I guess, like the courage to start Links of London like that.
Yeah, no, I guess, I mean, when I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to go to university, and I never, ever wanted to take another exam. But I mean, if you'd asked me then what I was, if I'd been designing jewellery, I would have probably laughed. But I think my mother was a real entrepreneur, you know, whether it was a fish business or importing horses from Russia. I mean, there were just a multitude of things. So I was surrounded by, you know, this kind of real entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, no, age 18, I went to Australia, and I started a little sandwich business with a friend, which was, you know, very new then. We made the sandwiches and delivered them to offices, you know, but that seems like so obvious. So that was that. And then the fish was kind of really for me where it all started. And I guess what I didn't say was, you know, so I made these fish cufflinks for Mum, and she wanted 60. It was cheaper to make 120 pairs of these cufflinks. So I was like, okay, well, let's make 120 pairs. I'll sell 60 to Mum. And then in the meantime, I kind of came back to London to live in London, working for Hamptons in London. And I thought, right, what am I going to do with these extra 60? So I called up the buyer at Harvey Nichols, and I'll never forget her name. She was called Fiona Duff. And you've got to remember that, you know, actually all those years ago, you had to ring the buyer. There was no email.
Did you cold call her? That's like, I mean, people try to do that now, but it's like very difficult, and you just, obviously they just ignore all the emails. You
can't find a number, can you? Yeah. But yeah, I cold called her, so I had to really steel myself to call. And anyway, this lovely lady, Fiona, said, yes, of course, I'll see you.
That's anyway, very nice of her.
Wasn't it? But you've got to remember that her job as a buyer is to find new things. So I guess she was, you know, just doing her job. But I went to her with this one pair of fish cufflinks, kind of 1990. And she said, well, these are great, but I can't take one design. So if you couldn't design some more, come back and see me. I literally think she thought she'd never see me ever again. She'd probably... Anyway, a few weeks later, I went back to her and said, actually, I've got these 6, whatever they were. And they were kind of, you know, golf bag, golf ball, pig head, pig bum, all these different cufflinks. She said, okay, these are great. I'll take these. And that was the beginning of Links of London.
But that playfulness, like those choice of like little objects and little kind of bits of whimsy, you kind of like carried that through from Links of London to Annoushka. So I wanted to then talk about your second charm, if you can introduce your second charm we've got here.
I mean, the globe is really representative, I guess, of travel. As I said, you know, my mother travelled a lot, but you can see it's really playful. And you'll see in Hong Kong, it's got a little ruby in it and a little ruby in London. And, you know, as I said, you know, this whole idea kind of started whilst I was living in Hong Kong. I also met my husband in Hong Kong, and then started Links of London, obviously, in London after we were married. And that's what that kind of represents. But it's the playfulness that's you know, you talk about the whimsy, but it's just that ability it's really tactile, it's playful, and for me, it's a kind of, you know, something that you can touch and feel all the time. It's just
the 2 rubies are strategically placed in London and Hong Kong, which I love because so my family is from Hong Kong, but I've never lived there. I grew up in London, visited frequently, but you can probably tell me a bit more about life in Hong Kong, and a really special time pre-handover as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's a shame you never lived there, because I still love going to Hong Kong. I mean, we've got a shop in Hong Kong, in the Mandarin, actually, and I absolutely love Hong Kong. And then, as you said, it was a real land of opportunity. I mean, I arrived there age 18. I was meant to meet a friend and take the Trans-Siberian Railway home, but I was a bit late having started this sandwich business in Australia. So she'd gone. So I ended up with a one-way ticket in Hong Kong. So I thought, okay, well, I'll stay here and see if I can get a job. So it was this, and somebody gave me a job, which was quite surprising because I was very underqualified to do anything. But somebody said, literally sat next to someone at dinner, and he said, oh, I hadn't had a holiday for goodness knows how long, blah, blah, blah. If I only I could find someone to take over for 2 or 3 weeks. So I said, oh, I'll do it. I knew literally not a freehold from leasehold. Anyway, so I ended up with this job at Hamptons. But Hong Kong is it's just such an exciting place.
I love this like accidental path that you've kind of taken from one thing to the next. It sounds extraordinary.
And the other thing that happened to me in Hong Kong is, well, A, I met my husband there, and B, the first piece of actual jewellery that I designed was my engagement ring. And I did that in Hong Kong.
Oh, yes. This is the Art Deco design
yes.
I see on your
It's
finger.
actually the middle bit is the bit. And what was so absolutely fantastic is it was designed weirdly in the Mandarin where I now have a shop, so it feels like full circle. But was such a funny story because John said to me, everybody in Hong Kong thinks I look like Richard Gere. I'm like, yeah, of course they do. Anyway, we go into this shop. We have to buzz your way into the shop. And the lady behind in the shop said, oh my goodness, you look like Richard Gere. So I was like, you've obviously paid her to say that. Anyway, but cut a long story short, they made this ring for me. And having never designed jewellery before, back to your original question, which you said I'm untrained. But what was so fantastic is they made a master for me in brass so that I could actually put it on my finger. And it wasn't quite right, and the proportion was quite right, and it sat a bit high. And so they made it again when I'd said, no, I want to wear it every day. And I had all sorts of comments about it. So Hong Kong has it's a really kind of important place in my life. And
it's a really great, it's almost like a centre of jewellery as well, because people there love jewellery. They have a deep passion for jewellery, and in particular gold, because it's very symbolic. It's very present in all the kind of gold shops and
its investment,
wedding jewellery,
those things in that culture too.
Yes,
no, it's really important.
Were you influenced by that aspect at all?
I think inevitably I was influenced by it, but at the time it wasn't really about gold for me. It was I was just doing a job in property. It was so not about that. But I couldn't find jewellery that I wanted to wear, so I just had commissioned 2 or 3 things, but in silver. So I couldn't afford gold. There was no way I could afford gold. I was 21, whatever I was. But it's kind of interesting looking back, because Hong Kong definitely, and Asia has definitely had an influence, I think, on my approach. And I think it's not necessarily conscious. It's only when people say, oh God, this has got some kind of feeling of an Asian influence. And I never really think of it like that, but I look at it, I'm like, maybe it did.
Well, let's move on to your third charm, which I believe is Yellow Submarine.
This is all about my mother. My very first memory was dancing to Yellow Submarine, Beatles song with Mum. And I don't know, I must have been 5, 6, something like that. So my mother died when I was 23. So it's a very, very important memory for me, and it's so clear in my head. And so I did this to remember Mum and that important memory. And she taught me so much, even in the short time that she was around. But the submarine's just adorable, and it's the propeller spins, and it's got a little diamond in the periscope, and it opens. It's a locket, and it's just a really special thing. But it's a visceral kind of memory.
That must have been so tough to lose your mother at such a young age, and given that she was so influential and pivotal in your life in terms of, her entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't realise that you, had lost her so young.
Yeah, no, it was, she died very, very suddenly. And it was really tough. But I was lucky enough, this is a real double-edged sword, but actually I took over her fish business. Literally, I had to give up what I was doing at Hamptons overnight, take over a fish business that I literally knew not a cod from a turbot. But I was young, I was 23. So it meant, and we just started kind of Links of London. So I used to get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive to the coast and buy fish straight off the boats, ring up all the chefs and tell them what I'd got. And then I'd get home at about 2, shower, change, and then I'd kind of a different hat on and put my Links of London hat on. All of that to say, through kind of just being so busy, I think that really helped me to get through the shock of Mum dying.
I mean, that to me is like the epitome of bootstrapping, like to straddle so many different hats and businesses. But looking at this yellow submarine and the kind of meaning behind it, I think the sentimentality of your charms, it seems to underpin like all the work that you have done, from Links of London to Annoushka, like injecting, I guess, that sense of emotion in jewellery.
But jewellery is all about emotion, isn't it? I mean, jewellery is not about just how it looks. I mean, if it doesn't look nice, no one's going to buy it. But for me, it's absolutely about what it means, why, when, the memories it holds, the significance it holds. And that's to me what's really important about jewellery. And I think that's true, from what I was doing at Links of London all the way through to now. It's all about significant moments. And, people used to come Links of London and they'd buy a charm because it was, somebody passed a driving test, or it was their 18th birthday, and next year they'd come and buy something else which was significant. It's just marking moments. And obviously in 18 karat gold, those moments are particularly precious. And the attention to detail that I can get is wonderful.
Well, moving on to another sentimental memory, we've got, I believe it's a gondola?
That is a ski gondola that's kind of rubies. There's rubies, and it's because as my kids we have a place in Megève in France, and it has a really old-fashioned gondola that's red, and so for me that signifies so many happy memories of a place that's very familiar, that the children absolutely love, and kind of that familiarity and everything, and just the memories that go with it.
I mean, I wish listeners of podcasts could appreciate how beautiful this little gondola is, with the things like pavé rubies and the glass on the windows. Rock
crystal windows. And and both doors open, and there's a set of skis, a little white gold set of skis
on the corner.
Yeah. But when I look at that, it's just so much about the memories and the happy times we've had there, and we still go, and there's the children all go now, and it's just a really special place for them.
When you first started Annoushka, which was in 2006, so you had sold...
No, it wasn't 2006, it was 2009. We sold Links of London in 2006.
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
So you had sold Links of London in 2006, and you, I believe you wanted to start a business that was maybe more personal, because Links of London had become, very big, very corporate in scale. Would you say that there was, a real kind of, I guess, like something missing in fine jewellery, that kind of whimsicality, playfulness.
Now, it's funny you say that, because actually, well, when we sold Link Salon in 2006, I thought, right, that's it. I'll go. I'm going to be perfect mummy. I'm going to, do all the things that I haven't done for a long time, and make sure I'm always there on the touchline and always, all of those things. And then I realised quite quickly that having worked since I was literally kind of 18, I'm like, it was not feeling like a natural place for me.
Yeah, you're not a stay-at-home mum.
I don't think so, and I think my children would definitely agree.
And so I kind of was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I guess all I've really ever done was either run a fish business or jewellery. And at the time, I mean, it's hard to think that now, but in 2009, the kind of jewellery landscape was really, really different from now. So, you'd have links, and then not very much between links and the high jewellers. So, whether you'd go to Cartier or Boucheron or any of those, and then the odd kind of gallery. But you had to be quite kind of confident about all very rich. So I just thought, do you know what, I'm going to just do what I really love. And so that was why we kind of started Annoushka. And at the time, I was like, I think I've always designed in kind of stages of life. Weirdly, I kind of look back. I didn't think that at the time, and I've never thought that. But looking back, I look at what we did at Links, and kind of little charms for children and godparents to come, to commemorate events. And I think I was 40, I guess, just about 40 when we sold Links. And I think there's a thing about, as you get older, I kind of think that yellow gold suits me better now than when I was younger. And so I wanted to start designing jewellery that had a bit more personality than perhaps some of the other jewellery that was out there, in terms of kind of, I mean, I've got a love bangle. I've had it since I was whenever, but it's slightly corporate. So it was really about designing really individual jewellery that could wear every day, and not be frightened to kind of get it out.
In your time, since starting Annoushka, you've seen a real change, and now you have this kind of very broad, landscape.
Massively. It's such a different landscape. But I'm kind of thinking, I'm thinking back to what it was. I mean, at the time, I just wanted to have jewellery that I could wear every day, that didn't I want to take the reverence out of it. And I certainly didn't want to be, ushered into a shop with a doorman and whispering and all of those.
Followed around.
Yeah, followed around. I'm like, no, I really didn't want to have all of that going on. And I really felt, actually, that quite a lot of jewellery was being designed by men. And it's a different thing, men designing jewellery. I mean, they do a wonderful job, but they don't necessarily wear it, so they don't really understand that those earrings have got to be super light, they've got to move with you. You might want to have a change, but without it all being a big palaver. That you do want the movement, because actually, if you've got something round your wrist or round your neck, I certainly tend to play with it. It's not just an adornment; it's absolutely something that you play with and feel. And so, kind of yellow gold is such a lovely, 18-karat gold is such a lovely material to work in. There's something about it, kind of, its patina and all of those kind of things.
Let's move on to your next charm, which obviously is again connected to a very important life stage. Peas in a pod. Oh. This is fabulous. The 4 pearls in the pod.
Yeah, that's one of my favourites. So those the peas in a pod are to represent my 4 children, and yeah. I mean, it's just it's a perfect thing.
It's a good job you had
four.
four to represent, like, because peas don't normally just. Well, I only have the two, so it wouldn't work with two peas in a pod in one pod.
You have to have the peanut. So I've got this adorable peanut with two little pearls in it.
But yes, I mean, four is just, like, I don't know many people that have
well,
four
I'm an only child, so I'm like, this was really peculiar for me to have 4 children. As an only child, it's like, oh God, 4. How have I managed that?
How did you juggle motherhood with Annoushka or Links of London beforehand?
I mean, it's a permanent juggle. You know that. You're juggling, women are juggling all the time. But there's no way I could have done it without help. I think, I had wonderful nannies throughout. I was so lucky. But also, it's been brilliant working with John, my husband, because it's always meant that either I can go to the school play and he went to the meeting, or I go to the whatever it was and he'd go to the touchline, so that flexibility has been incredibly helpful. But it doesn't matter what you do. It's a juggle. It's a big old juggle. You always feel guilty for not coming home 2 hours ago, and you'll feel guilty about leaving the office. I mean, it's all of those things we all know as women. We kind of know that is a real thing.
It's a constant guilt cycle. Yeah, I definitely know that. Have they had any input in, like, how you've kind of navigated Annoushka over the years?
I mean, they've had masses of input because, I was talking about designing for stages in life. So that is absolutely true in terms of, they would be given christening presents, and I was like, I'm not sure about these. I think I could do a better job. So I was involved a whole range of christening presents at Links. And then as they get older and they'd be doing the gymkhana or whatever they'd be doing, I started doing kind of sweetie bracelet, for example. The sweetie bracelet's a really good example because they were wearing those sweetie bracelets used to eat those sweets from. Actually, that was very much part of that particular phase in life. So they've been absolutely an important part of the journey, and now is even better because I'm learning so much from them because I'm old and they're young, and they're in terms of asking their opinion, would their friends buy this, would they like this, or one of my children, Chloe, is really interested in the business, and she's got a really good eye for design. And it's a joy to be able to kind of, and also they don't hold back in terms of what they think. Do you know what I mean?
They're honest.
They're honest. So I'll ask you and you say, oh, yes, it's lovely, but, or not. They'll go, absolutely horrendous, absolutely hideous, don't do it.
The real talk.
Yeah. And I really love that. But the joy of learning from them now is like, it's so refreshing. And you never think you're going to get to that phase.
We come on to your penultimate charm, and this is very sweet as well. It's a little dog paw.
Oh, no. It's very tactile, isn't it?
Yes, it's very, very good to kind of rub.
Yeah,
with your thumb.
Yeah. So dogs have been an absolutely massive part of my life. Do you like dogs?
Yes, I'm a dog person.
Oh, you're a dog person. Well, I'm a real dog person. I'm not a cat person.
But yeah, I'm also a little bit scared of cats.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, oh. But so dogs have been a really important part of my life ever since I can remember, and really weird. But so that's a dog paw for that. But I know it's really weird, but I really like the smell of my dog's feet. No, I know.
Ooh, that's a weird one.
It smells like biscuits. It smells like biscuits. Anyway, I thought until quite recently that I was weird and didn't really discuss that. And then I read a whole article in the Daily Mail about all these people who liked the smell of their dog's feet. But there's this whole raft of people that agree with me. Who knew?
I'll have to look that one up. I'm not sure if I'm going to just start grabbing. I don't have a dog, unfortunately. I hope to, once I get the kids out of the... Once they're a bit older, then I can handle the dog.
I know that's all quite a lot to, but so that's why I've done this paw, and I've got French bulldogs. I've had them ever since I was very small, when they were really unfashionable. They seem to have become incredibly fashionable, and everyone's, why are your dogs so ugly? And now they think they're not ugly; they think they're gorgeous. Anyway, the uglier the dog, the more I love them.
I'm a pug fan. I'm very cliche. Actually, I would love a pug one day.
Yeah, well, there you go. French bulldogs.
Yes,
bigger version, a bit more, feisty version.
So we've got to talk about your final charm, which I think is just the funniest thing I've seen. It's literally the word sex on legs, and I believe that's an homage to your husband.
That's an homage to my husband. Yeah, because I said to him, okay, so when I was thinking about my 7 charms, I'm like, okay, I'm going to represent you with a kind of lovely gold rock. And I was kind of imagining this quite beautiful gold rock, like a kind of just...
A solid
rock, because he has been my absolute rock, and I couldn't have done any of this without him. I mean, there's absolutely no question. He's given me the confidence. He's always been there to say, you know what, you definitely can do it. All the time I got total imposter syndrome because I didn't train to design jewellery, etc. And he's always been the one that, no, you absolutely can do it. So I thought gold rock was a really nice, way to represent him. And when I said that to him, he went, gold rock? I don't want to be a gold rock. So I said, well, what do you want to be? So he said, well, obviously I want to be sex on legs. So I'm like, okay, we'll go with sex on legs. Hence the kind of, diamond sex written in diamonds, and then on these little gold legs with wobbly feet.
He purportedly looks like Richard Gere, and he's sex on legs.
Clearly.
You
haven't met him.
He dare I ask, is he?
Yeah, absolutely. Got to say that, haven't I?
Yeah, you actually are obligated to say that, or not.
But it's also just that kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek approach, because I think jewelry is so much about, it doesn't have to be serious all the time, and and if the legs didn't wobble, it wouldn't be quite so kind of pleasing. And
it's funnier with the wobbling legs.
It's funny, isn't it? I know. I just think it's anyway, I love it. And to be honest, we put it on display in the stores to kind of talk about this kind of life in charms, and to really get people to understand that actually anything is possible. I never expected anyone to buy it. Anyway, lots of people bought it.
I would
bizarre.
feel this would be a popular one, just because it's so funny and unexpected.
I know. I just think it's
you want that around your wrist.
Yeah, I think.
pendant.
And the other thing is that the thing that around your wrist or here, because around your neck, because I think the other thing with charms is that everyone thinks of them as charms on bracelets, but actually we don't live like that anymore, do we? We're all busy doing this with the typing and etc., etc. So they all come kind of designed so that you can put them on a necklace and wear them kind of differently. But anyway, that's the story about sex on legs.
Well, thank you for your 7 tales of your 7 charms. I think they've definitely spanned the gamut from the sentimental to the funny to the pivotal. So I wonder, what is next in the journey of Annoushka?
So really unlikely, but when we sold Links of London in 2006, I think I'm pretty sure I thought my silver kind of journey was over. So actually, for the first time in nearly 20 years, I'm just about to launch a collection in silver, and that's based on Knuckle, which is a collection I launched in 2023, and it's this collection of chains, and very much based around, because I couldn't find, when I said to you, it's all about phases, but in this particular case, I couldn't find a chain that I really liked that was kind of both timeless and felt kind of modern. And the reason it's called knuckle, I'm going to show you actually, is because this is the knuckle, this part, it's the joint, and it acts like the knuckles on your fingers so that it allows the joints either side to move. So that's why it's called knuckle.
Oh, so to like kind of move more freely. I've got one on my wrist as well, so they move kind of more free form. But yeah, the interesting thing I was reading up about the chains is that obviously most chains are machine made today, and you found craftsmen in Arezzo in Italy that do it kind of by hand.
So you're absolutely right. So 98% of most chains, 98% of chains that you see in the market are made by machine. So and it is unusual to find handcrafted chain. So what's really lovely about this collection is it's made by a kind of master craftsman in Arezzo in Italy, who I first worked with 30 plus years ago when I did the Sweetie bracelet, and he made the first Sweetie bracelet. So I knew that he was the right person to go to in terms of working together to make this come alive. And he's kind of 82 now, and we've known each other for a very long time, so it's really lovely to come full circle.
Oh, another full circle.
I know but it's exciting, and it's difficult to make because part of it is cast. So this knuckle joint is cast, and yet these are made separately, and then they have to be soldered together. So it is quite a complicated and long-winded thing to do. But all of that to say, so I'm really excited now to be using this kind of what's become a signature for us, I think, knuckle collection, and make it in silver. When you're designing in silver, what you have is the ability to make things a bit bigger, bolder, heavier, and that's quite hard to do when you're just in 18-karat gold, particularly now because the gold's at an absolute all-time high.
Yes,
as it happens. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, but in silver, it allows you to go bigger and be a bit more playful with it. And I think one of the things that's so important about knuckle is the playfulness. I mean, the fact is it has two clasps, so one either end, and that allows you to do so much. I mean, it allows you really to join this to this.
Oh yeah, to extend and add.
To make it long. So actually, if you have one bracelet and one necklace, so let's say you have a bold necklace and a heavy bracelet, if you put those two things together, I think minimum you can wear them 6 different ways. And so for me, I find that really important part of my kind of whole ethos around design, is that it should work really hard for you. We don't live a life anymore where it's all about occasion, or not my life, what I might be. So I want the jewellery to work really hard for you, and knuckle absolutely embodies all of that. So the silver, introduction of silver is just, I'm excited about it because I think it'll enable more people to kind of come into it and kind of understand my whole kind of approach.
Well, it's part of that kind of personalisation and individuality, ability to individualise.
Yeah, to make it yours.
To make it your own.
Absolutely yours, yeah. And yeah, so for me, that's... Anyway, who thought 20 years ago that I'd come back to silver? But let's see. Let's hope everybody likes it.
Well, your life and charm seems to be all about kind of circularity and symbolic moments. But I wanted to end perhaps with a bit more of a journalist's question, and because we were talking about the next steps and like new audiences, new customers coming into the world of Annoushka, and I think in the fashion and luxury space there's a lot of kind of question marks, I think, about value of things and what something is worth. And I wondered, from your perspective, having had so much experience in the field, is, how do you determine value in an Annoushka piece?
That's a really interesting question. But I think in jewellery, in what I do specifically, is, first of all, there is genuine value. It is real gold. So there's no, dare I say, gold plate, sometimes called vermeil, sometimes called silver gilt, all of those things, which I don't work in that because I absolutely know that is going to rub off. And therefore, once it's rubbed off, it's probably something you're not going to want to wear anymore. And therefore, it's probably landfill. What I absolutely know about working in 18 karat gold and silver and, whatever, but it's real gold, it will be here in thousands of years, as we know. And it will still retain its value. In fact, now it'll be rather more valuable than it was 10 years ago because of the appreciation of gold. But that's on the kind of monetary side. But on the other side, I know I kind of bang on about it, but actually it is about value, is about memory, it's about experience, it's about what you can pass on, what you can talk about. And so, life in charms, I hope that, when I'm not around anymore, that my grandchildren will learn a bit about me through the charms that, these particular charms. So I feel like that's a kind of part of the legacy, if you like, that gold and jewellery really, really allows, unlike kind of a lot of other luxury, if you like. Clothes might be around, but they might not. But jewellery is something that is passed on through families, through friends or whatever. So for me, it's a kind of, there's no question about the value.
Well, thank you, Annoushka, for allowing me to take over your podcast and for letting me delve into your life and charms.
Well, Susie, thank you for doing it, and I'm rather liking it, this side of the situation. It's much more relaxing.
I'm going to hand back the mantle to you, though. It is definitely your baby, and you are definitely the Queen of Charms.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on My Life in Charms. If today's conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own story, begin your Life in Charms journey at Annoushka.com or email bespoke@Annoushka.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to hear more extraordinary stories told in jewels.